Why does this exist? I mean, why does this exist? Why would anyone choose to put themselves in an unwinnable situation like this? If they change it, they incur the wrath of the very fan base they were hoping to tap into, and if they don't change it, all they've done is taken something that's already been adapted multiple times, sometimes quite well, and made it whiter. Hello my beautiful watchers, I'd like to start this review, if I may, by sharing a few things I've learned about adaptation reboots and in-name only adaptations. Aside from trying to make an easy buck, the only good reason to reboot an adaptation is if the first attempt was a really good film, but there was room for improvement in regards to book loyalty. Back when I was reviewing The Shining, I basically said that you can get away with making huge changes from the source material if the movie you make is very good. Since then, I've realised that it is a bit more complicated than that. The book also has to fall into the Goldilocks zone of being just popular enough that it's worth adapting, but not so popular that the film doesn't have a chance of becoming more so. It also depends very heavily on the book's fan base. If it's quite an old book now, so not as commonly read anymore, or it was a cult classic, it will probably be okay because it will only piss off a relatively small amount of people, while everyone else will be able to appreciate the film for its own merits. However, if the book is any of the following, it's essential to avoid an in-name only adaptation. Still very popular for its story, characters, or both. Has been loyally adapted before, so there's something to compare it to. Or has a fan base that has a reputation for being overly intense. If it's all of those things and you still decide to do an in-name only adaptation, may the gods have mercy on your dumbass soul. Death Note is the only manga I've read all the way through. I've also seen the anime and both parts of the original live-action Japanese movie, but I've not gotten around to watching the newest live-action Japanese TV series yet. I'm just giving you my credentials as a middling level fan before we start. I really don't want to have to synopsisize this film, and I definitely lack the time, inclination, and skill to explain the context of the original Death Note to the uninitiated, so for the sake of honesty, I should probably warn you that this review is kind of geared towards people who know Death Note already, and have seen the Netflix film. Apologies if you are not in that demographic. A lot of this is going to sound completely nonsensical to you. Oh, and just a friendly, polite heads up, I am so not interested if I'm pronouncing something wrong here. Let's start with the big stuff first. They Americanized a very Japanese product, and by that I basically mean westernized. I'm not trying to have a go at America in particular. This is one of the very few aspects of this film that I think was actually helped by them disregarding the original story so entirely, which, FYI, yeah, they really did. They fucking threw the original story out of the window in this. As a result, they've not taken a Japanese story and made it American, they've taken the concept of Death Note and tried to think about how it would have gone differently if it was taking place in Seattle right from the ground up. I'm not saying I think it was a good idea, I'm just saying I get, in principle, what the reasoning was there. I think for me personally, this might be a let's hate it for the right reasons sort of scenario. There's plenty of stuff they screwed up in this, so we don't have to just harp on about the fact that they Americanized it all the way through. A lot of really cool stuff from the manga didn't get featured in this at all. The eye trade, the memory erasure if you give up ownership thing, Ellen Light's deaths. I think we all kind of saw that coming though, as this was always going to have to be hella condensed down to fit into a film's runtime. The very first note I wrote down while watching this was, that had better not be Misa, and technically it wasn't, it was Mia, but still. Come on, guys. First MJ from Spider-Man Homecoming and now her. I mean, is Daria just really in right now? Everyone has to be this super detached hipster emo hybrid girl. Also, apparently it's okay to change her name, but Light has to still be Light? Guys, that's not a name in the Western world. I mean, I know at one point Light's dad did mention that his mum was a hippie, but come on! If you're going to Americanize something, that should have been the first thing you changed. No one is going to believe that this is supposed to be the same guy, so you might as well have just given him a name that makes bloody sense. I did not like what they were doing with Light in this right from the start. I know the concept of the best performer in the class also being the most popular kid in the school is a very Japanese way of thinking and quite alien to America, but the bullied alternative outcast loner is such a cliche at this point. Was there really no middle ground here? You had to jump all the way to making Light Donnie Darko. That, of course, pales in comparison to the fact that he is a fucking dumbass in this. Light is a fucking genius. That's the whole basis of his character. I mean, sure, he pulls some crafty shit at the end of the film, but that's nothing compared to what Manga Light was doing on a daily basis. Actually, yeah, let's make a list of all the dumb shit that Light did in this. He forged homework papers in a crowded public place where everyone could see him do it. Even after finding out that it was legit magic, he proceeded to whip out the Death Note in another crowded public place where everyone could see him with it. He revealed everything about being a murderer, the Death Note, and the Death Gods to a girl after a 1-minute conversation on the assumption that because she was a little quirky, she would be on board with the whole killing for a greater good philosophy. Or because he was desperate to get laid, but that's even dumber! He chose the name Kira for himself instead of it being assigned to him by the public, even after pointing out that it translates to his name in other languages. Despite having no reason to believe that he had cameras in his room, and having Mia there to take over writing the names in the book if needed, he instantly stopped using the Death Note the second he realised he was being followed, thus confirming to the police that they were onto the right suspects. He thought that the best way to appear innocent and inconspicuous to the people following him was to go to a fun fair at night wearing dark sunglasses. He completely failed to notice that a key page had been removed from the Death Note after Mia mysteriously left the room for a few minutes. He almost instantly all but confesses to L after a single conversation so he could verbally subtweet threats to him. He immediately started trusting Mia again, despite her not having hesitated to attempt to murder his father the day before. Even though he fully intended to spare Watari, he gave him his phone number and spoke to him directly, giving the man all he could possibly have needed to identify him as Kira after he was released from his control. He completely forgot to assign someone to find and secure the missing page of the Death Note in his final master plan, and instantly started blurting out all the clues that El would need to find it the second he was cornered. He arranged a long, complicated way of killing his girlfriend and vindicating himself in the eyes of the law, but did nothing to neutralize L long term, and just assumed that he would give up after the police stopped taking him seriously, almost certainly resulting in his own death at the end of the film, assuming they don't get a sequel. Film Light would not have lasted 1 day facing off against Manga L. But that's okay, because Film L is an even bigger dumbass than him! Yep, this wanker is what finally made up my mind and turned me against this movie. Nothing against the actor, he gave a stunning performance. The problem was, the performance he was told to give was that of an unstable, insecure lunatic. L is one of my all-time favourite characters, and not just in manga and everything, and this ineptitude was an insult to him. He does nothing to try to draw Light out, no clever tricks like presenting bait or decoys, and no lying on TV saying something was being broadcast worldwide when it wasn't. None of the really clever and cool shit that Manga L pulled featured in the film. He just had Light followed, and then when that didn't work, he had him followed but harder. The thing that finally gave Light away to him, not killing his dad, wasn't even presented as being L's idea. It was his dad's natural reaction to the FBI agents being murdered, and L just drew conclusions from it. Same thing with the local TV video that narrowed down his search parameters to America. L basically just got lucky a bunch of times. He didn't create the situations like he did in the manga. Worse still, the very second something doesn't go to plan for L, he instantly falls apart, like full on loses his shit and becomes an emotional, impulsive wreck. He tries to go after Light with a fucking gun! I know Watari meant a lot to him, but if you were to ask me what is the exact opposite of L, I'd say, well, probably a desperate, crying out of control maniac with a gun and no self-confidence! Here's a list of the dumb shit that he does even before he goes off the rails. Despite all of them being equally improbable accidents, he only made the connection to hostage-taking salute guy being a Kira victim, but completely missed mother-killing steak knife guy and the school bully kid, both of whom would have instantly tied Kira to Light. Yeah, I know they all had names, but who gives a fuck? He made no attempt to enlist Light's dad's help in investigating his son by explaining to him that it meant they could strike him off the list of suspects. He didn't bug Light's house with cameras until way after it could possibly have been useful. At no point did he think it would be a good idea to have the records of his true identity that were just lying around in an abandoned building destroyed, even after finding out that that was key to Kira's power to kill. Making a public declaration of war against Kira, then coming to meet Light in person and revealing that he was L, made so much more sense in context in the manga, because there they were both calculated risks that he was taking to draw Kira out into the open and hopefully make a mistake. When both of these things happen in the film, there is no payoff for it for L, so it just seems like an unnecessarily reckless ego-boosting act. This sort of thing isn't just limited to L either. Despite rewriting almost all of the stories, so much stuff just happens because it happened in the manga, but without the same context, it doesn't make any bloody sense. These choices are just so weird. It's like they were intentionally trying to get the worst of both worlds adaptation-wise. Instead of giving L any sort of a character in this, they just gave him quirks. I mean, he eats jelly beans out of a glass like he's Nicolas Cage, can tell you to the exact hour how long it's been since he last slept, and has like an old-timey phone and pocket watch. As a result, instead of getting the impression that he's developed some unusual habits due to his extreme intellect and profession, Film L looks like he's just being weird for the sake of being weird. They made L into a hipster! I guess they decided that in order to make Light and L look smart again, they had to make everyone else seem more moronic. Light's father freely gives out classified information when asked, and at one point Light throws off the agents following him by putting his hat on another guy so they'll follow him instead. The young man in question was wearing a different colour shirt, had different colour hair, and was Asian. Oh boy, did they fuck with the way the Death Note works in this. Ugh. They dropped the default means of death being a heart attack angle in this, which was a bit weird because without that being the primary identifier, how did people differentiate between regular deaths and Kira? I mean, you can clearly see in the montage of all the people being killed that none of them are writing his name on the wall after the first group of death row inmates. Apparently they really wanted Death Note to be more like Final Destination, with all these really improbable accidents coming to fruition. In this version, you can kill a Shimigami by writing their name in it, even if Ryuk was confident that he could stop him from doing so. Just putting someone's name down no longer works. You have to also add a description of the death, but just writing he dies will work and result in a random cause of death. This is both confirmed and contradicted in the same fucking movie, because you can see that Ryuk's name is in there as part of the warning not to trust him, but at the end you can see that the list of FBI agents' name was added with no instructions to jump off the roof, but apparently they could be lumped in with someone else's death description, so a name on its own was sufficient for them. I'm pretty sure I remember something about this actually. Yeah, here we go. In the manga version of the Death Note, there's a rule that says you can put multiple names down for a single cause of death, but you have to do it within 4 seconds from the time of writing it. So that doesn't check out here either. Also, yes, I do own a Death Note. Only the official owner of the notebook can see the accompanying Shimigami now, and this does nothing for the plot aside from add a few moments where Mia goes, "What?" and Light says, "Oh, sorry, I was talking to Ryuk." This is really annoying because it was such a key part of the manga, but you no longer need someone's full name for it to work. Either that or Netflix believes that Japanese people go by single names. The Death Note also apparently takes some initiative on its own now, because even though Light didn't write down anything about taking orders from him, Watari becomes obedient to all additional instructions as soon as it takes control of him. And finally, the crowning glory of bullshit, you can cancel a death that's been written if you burn the page it's written on before it takes effect. But you can only do it once, so be careful. This is so stupid. It was at about the halfway mark that I started to get the distinct impression that the filmmakers believed that they were improving on the manga by shifting away from the cat and mouse game with El and Kira to the convoluted power struggle between Light and his girlfriend. Which, by the way, is so fucking forced. The difference between Light and Mia is akin to a Futurama sketch. I say your willingness to kill goes too far. Well, I say your willingness to kill doesn't go far enough. Gosh, we are so different. Indeed, killing each other is the only option. Agreed. A common complaint that's already arose about this film is it seems to be bending over backwards to make Light seem less evil and more sympathetic. The first time he uses the Death Note, while actually believing that it's going to work, is to avenge his mother's death, and then he refuses to kill anyone who's not committed a crime, even if that means endangering his anonymity, and then he does genuinely try to save Watari later. He basically acts more like a realistic person, but that's not really the point of Light. I mean, he believes so hard that the crime and war-free world that he was creating for people was worth any price, even the lives of innocents or his own loved ones. You really don't get any sort of a sense in this film that Light is committed to this new world order. He's sort of just pissed off about his mother and trying to impress his girlfriend. One of the very few compliments I hear for this film is they at least got Ryuk right, but I have to wholeheartedly disagree there. The only thing I can say for Ryuk is at least the CGI looks better than the Japanese version. Again, this is not a complaint about the actor. Willem Dafoe was fucking great in this, and that dude could almost be Ryuk without CGI, but he's just not the death god that we all came came to know and love from the manga and anime. Ryuk was on Earth and set all of this up because he was bored and wanted to watch what would happen if he gave a random human a Death Note. The key word there is watch. Ryuk never tried to encourage Light to use the Death Note or give it up to someone else. He was content to just follow him around, being remarkably funny. This new film, Ryuk is far too keen to get personally involved with the goings-on there, and it takes a lot away from the character if you ask me. Okay, that's the more structured part of the review out of the way. Quick-fire complaints time. Light basically has Misa's backstory now. Did anyone else notice that? And by that I mean that he's messed up because of the unpunished killer of a family member, not that he's a J-pop star. The early joke where Ryuk corrects Light's pronunciation of his name only makes sense because Light was reading everything out loud like a 5-year-old. I thought for a short glorious time that what they were doing in this film by having Light and Mia be Kira as a couple right from the start was splitting the different parts of Manga Light's personality into two characters in the film, so what was initially his internal conflict with the different parts of his nature could be external, but no, they were just fucking over the story. Ryuk's love of apples seems so random without the manga's explanation of what it's like in Shimigami Land. Why was Light's detention taking place in a stationery closet, and why did the stationery closet of a high school have multiple jars of marbles in it? Wow, these guys really wanted to play up the gore factor here. I mean, bodies just burst like balloons full of soup in this film. A guy's head explodes when he's electrocuted. That just doesn't physics. Elle is basically Black Widow now, apparently. I mean, the way that Watari described the orphanage he grew up in and the way they tortured him to make him into a super detective sounds suspiciously like her backstory with the Red Room dance hall thing. I probably should have looked up exactly what that was called before I started this. Also, as soon as I saw that it was abandoned, I was like, okay, well, definitely no Mellow and Near then, huh? There was an extended chase scene in this that I had no interest in. I was like, can this just be done now? Can this just be done now? Can this just be done now? Guys, it's not the fucking Bourne Supremacy. Get on with the fucking story. Why the fuck-a-duck was it so important to Mia that Light officially hand over ownership of the notebook to her? I mean, you can clearly see that she or anyone else could already use it without that, and she had the fucking book. She gave it back to him so that he could give it to her. Then when he doesn't, she just takes it from him, but apparently that time it counts as her claiming ownership. I couldn't see a single fucking advantage to being the notebook's official owner, aside from being able to see Ryuk, and I really don't think that was worth holding Light's life hostage for. I could almost have forgiven the wildly different events of the story if they'd stuck to the fundamental core of Death Note. I mean, forget the book that kills people and forget the Shimigami, that's all just the setup. The story is the battle of minds between Light and L, and they just ripped that bit of it to shreds. Basically, what it comes down to is this. The manga is about two fiendishly intelligent, cold-blooded geniuses with equally strong convictions but vastly conflicting ideologies battling it out in a deadly game of wits. The film is about a slightly smarter than average hipster with a gun physically running after a slightly smarter than average emo. And it's exactly as less entertaining as that sounds. The thing is, I genuinely think this movie could have been something salvageable if they'd handled it right, new storyline and all. Oh, the review's over, by the way. The rest of this is just going to be me rambling about how I would have done it better. Here's some ground rules. Firstly, stick to the original rules for how the Death Note works. Having clearly defined limitations is essential for there to be any tension involved in the story, and adding stuff runs the risk of creating plot holes. Second of all, Ryuk has to be an impartial observer. He is far too OP to get personally involved in the story. Thirdly, and I'm a little bit amazed I have to mention this, don't make the internationally renowned genius detective an easily manipulated emotional wreck. That's just dumb. It completely removes any credibility he has as a threat to the lead. And here's the most essential thing, make it a sequel, not a reboot. Think about how much more sense that would have made for this story. A few years after Light's death, Ryuk is bored again and decides to try dropping the Death Note in America this time. That instantly removes any potential controversy when it comes to whitewashing. Instead of extremely poor Light and Misa knockoffs, you could have two original characters. Let's call them Jeff and Tammy. No one would be complaining about them trying to show Light in a more sympathetic light because he's not Light, he's Jeff. Jeff can have all the different morals and ideals that he wants. It makes sense now that Jeff isn't as smart as Light because Light was a once-in-a-generation prodigy. No one could hope to compare to him. Jeff choosing to call himself Kiro is now an homage and an attempt to continue his legacy, not an incredibly laboured tie-in. Instead of having an incredibly inaccurate adaptation of L, it could be a grown-up Nia with his own new sidekick/father figure and his own bizarre habits that he's developed since the manga ended. Now, admittedly, you'd have to play down his part in the movie quite significantly, because Nia would put the smackdown on Jeff far too quickly with all his past experience with Death Notes, but I mean, the film was trying to make Light's girlfriend the main nemesis anyway, so why not just bring him in right at the end to fuck shit up? This way, not only does it not matter that they threw the original story out of the window, people would be praising it for trying new things and settings like they did with Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. It might get a little convoluted trying to justify how Riek got his hands on Sido's Death Note again, but think how cool it would be to see Jeff flick through it and see all the Japanese and English writing and the bloodstains and all those other cool callbacks, you know? Hell, even if you're dead set on making Riek an asshole now, this goes away towards justifying that. Once he's realised that Jeff isn't going to be anywhere as interesting as Light, it would explain him starting to try to encourage him to pass the notebook on to someone else. But no, they had to make it a very loose adaptation of the original, with just enough loyalty to it that they shit all over the established characters, but nowhere near enough that there's any indication they respected the source material in any way, and they showed no understanding of this story's fanbase or the anime community in general. I have no sympathy for the creators of this show. I do have some for the cast, because almost all of them did a really great job, but I suspect being involved in this film isn't going to do a lot for their careers. So yes, I'm afraid this is another classic case of the filmmakers wanting to have their cake and eat it. They wanted access to the manga's fanbase, but didn't want to be held accountable for the accuracy of their adaptation, and unfortunately the end result was a cake that no one wanted to have or eat. Hey beautiful watchers, I just wanted to give you a quick reminder that there's a variety of rewards you can earn by becoming a Patreon, including early access to all videos, getting to be a part of the survey about how many people saw the film and read the book, or playing Minecraft with me on my 24-hour server. Higher level contributors can also join the Dom's Skype chat room, and best of all, choose future episodes of Lost in Adaptation. However, if right now you are thinking, my goodness the Dom, I can't do that, I just don't want to. Fear not, if you would instead be willing to like, share, subscribe, or a combination of all three, that goes a long way towards helping my channel grow and reach new beautiful watchers. Have a most pleasant day, and I will see you soon.